Start recording.
Okay guys, so today we're going to be looking at nav bars for our web pages. Roy's going to go through the HTML to start, I'm going to type, and then we'll switch over when we get to CSS.
Okay, so you're all familiar with how most modern web pages look. They're, in terms of navigation, the tool that you see on most websites that make this job a lot easier, that's all going to be the nav bar, okay, where you can click across in multiple locations. So today, the next step of the web page design, we're going to create a nav bar that you can use later on to fit into your web pages. So initially, we're going to start off, this time around, everyone please start off on a clean HTML document, title it index.html. Please keep it separate from the files you have from the previous lessons. Ideally, with every single lesson, have a new folder. You can always go back to implement what you've learned today to your previous lessons or your other projects, but just keep them separate for the time being. Okay, so we need a brand new index.html and a brand new style.css. Please give me a go ahead once everyone's got that ready. And of course, as always, with your HTML file, to start it off, you always start it with the doc type HTML at the top, declaration of the HTML, and then within the HTML tags, we'll put the head and the body, just two separate parts. Good. Okay, moving onwards, before we're going to do any sort of programming, the first thing we need to do is because we have to use the CSS to style the HTML file at the web page later on, we're going to want to link that up to the HTML file. So in your head, please write the following. Okay, on the screen, you want to link the CSS file to the HTML so that it knows all the styling is going to be external and it's going to be on this sheet right here. Any questions so far? Good. Let's move on. Just wait until everyone's typed that out.
There you go. Any of this like
Good one, Ken. Just get settled down and copy down whatever we updates. Question?
I don't know how to open CSS next to this one in this browser. I need to open the CSS next to it, not open it where it's in my one.
Okay, so with the CSS, you want to create it as you do any HTML file, so
I'll just set it up
but the ending is .css, but what you put inside the CSS file is different.
so we just read that.
You want the CSS file in the same directory as your HTML file, so in the same folder, so to speak. And ideally, those two should be the only things in your folder. I'll just reiterate what I said to these guys at the beginning, because we're going to be moving forward with different elements with every lesson. So ideally, what you could do is have a folder created separately for every single lesson, so that what you learn during that lesson and what you experiment upon could be isolated in that folder. You can always go back and try out something, what you learned in those lessons on your previous projects. That's fine, but for the time being, just keep them separate. Okay. Once you've linked the CSS file, we're going to move on to the first step of our nav bar, and that is the way in which the nav bar will work. As you know, a nav bar is what you imagine to be sitting at the top of the web page when you first visit it, and it will have a series of buttons that you can press. That they will have their own functions, and the best way to represent this in an HTML file to create this will be to create a list element. Okay, it's logical when you think about it. A list you can contain a list of the buttons that you're using, and those buttons could have functions attached to them. In that case, once you've linked up the CSS, we go down to the body and we create the list element.
Yeah.
Good. And the way which the way in which you declare the list element, you put the UL tags. These indicate a single list, the beginning and the end of a single list. And between them, you put the li tags. The li tags signify each element of a list. For the time being, we'll go with these elements in our list. These are the home, about, contact us. Pretty standard stuff that you will see on a nav bar on any website.
Okay.
Shall we try running that? See what it does.
Oh, you probably want to save that.
That's okay.
Or can you take a step to that?
That's a different one.
Yes.
It's in desktop club Kopsky. Okay. This is what it should look like for the time being. The writings are quite small, but as you can see, you have the 3 list elements that you created, and they're sitting at the top of the page. The reason why this currently does not resemble a nav bar very much, and the primary reason for this is because it lacks styling. Okay, so that's what where the CSS comes in, and that's why I had you link the file to the HTML at the very beginning. Max, would you like to come in?
Yep. Okay, so we're going to look at styling, and we're going to see how we can turn, well, what we just saw, that short list, into more of the standard across the top, various links. And the first thing we're going to do there is we're going to remove the margin on the edge of the thing, at the edge of the web page, so that our nav bar displays all the way across the top. And to do that, we just set the entire body of the HTML, that margin, to 0. The next thing we'll do is we'll set some tags for the URL, for the unordered list, and that will be well. So what we saw before was it had bullet points and it was in a kind of arrangement going one after the other, moving down the page. We want to remove the list style type, and we set that to none. We're going to change its margin to 0 and its padding to 0. All this is doing is removing the default elements out of the list. From there, we want to ensure that overflow is hidden so that it doesn't move down the page where we don't want it to be.
Sorry.
Following this, we have the background color, which you can pick, to be your own. For us, we're going to use this hex value. Yeah. Is everyone okay with connecting these 2 files together currently? Yes.
Question. Why are you using the how to say, different file?
A different file. Okay, so here we have an HTML page. This is a web page, in effect. And what we saw was it had no styling. This at the top, this head, in the head, we have a link to a style sheet. The type is CSS, which means cascading style sheet. And this is where it's stored. This is that file. This is that style.css. And what it does is connect this, and it says, okay, find the body in this file. Set its margin to 0. Find the unordered list in this file. Now get rid of its style type, get rid of its margin, get rid of its padding. Set its overflow to hidden, and we give it this background color. So effectively, everything you see here, whether it's an unordered list, a list item, it's going to target this, the equivalent red tag on this page. So we're just going to type out a bit more CSS, and I'll explain what they do as they appear. Floating left means each list item is just going to move as far left as it can in its current space that it's given. We saw this last week for those who are here, but what this here means is that you can select any link inside a list item. So what we're going to do is add the link tag to each of the tags in the HTML. So Roy, if you wouldn't mind, once we finish this bit here, could we just add some links to our home, about, and contact us? Because what we want those to do is not just sit there and be text to look pretty. We also want them to have some functionality. So to start, we're going to have A is the link tag for those who don't remember.
Ah, keyboard.
Is everyone good with that so far? So what this does is it targets any link inside the list item. After that, we're going to be looking at a pseudo class, which we also saw last time, but once again, what this means is you can set certain attributes after each element that you target. So here, when we target a list item that has an A inside it, a link, when we find that link, if you hover over that link, we want to change the background color of that list item. So
is that bit only active when you hover on it?
yeah, so the hover, this is called a pseudo class. Pseudo class. And what that means is that only when you're hovering over it is this bit of styling active. So it's implementing some functionality into your web page without using any JavaScript yet. We've got a question there, or all good? No? Okay. So what we have here is a class. A class is represented by a dot, and an ID is represented by a hashtag. This class active, we're going to put on our first list element, so on A, next to home. We're going to put over here, we are putting the active class, so class equals active. Because when we are on this web page, this is going to be our home page. And so we want the styling to know that this is the one we are currently on. It does need the quotes.
Does it?
I believe so. No, ignore me.
We just have a minute that doesn't work.
Yeah. Everyone on board so far?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so
Shall we give it a try?
yeah, let's see what that's looking at currently.
Ooh,
It's not just mine.
that's unexpected.
Okay, just pop back to the other file. No, sorry. Well, I'm sorry. Our Sublime text.
Uh-huh.
Let's try and diagnose where that's gone wrong. So.
I have a suggestion. If we open up the file in
Our directory.
if you open it in Chrome though, in the file directory. So when you're faced with a problem like this is a classic thing that will happen with your situation. So if we open it up in Chrome and just throw it up on that tab for us.
Okay, you want the
The index.html that you're currently working in.
We haven't saved either of these things is our issue.
that's the issue.
So we can turn in Sublime by whether it's a dot or a cross. Other text editors are different, but for this one, we currently need to see that both files are saved as it is active on the, well, we are simulating it being on the internet, so when we now load it, hopefully, we're going to have to go through the whole directory.
There we go.
We have a nice nav bar. So it might be worth explaining what. So this is our hover, our pseudo class that we used, and
That's the hover.
it might be worth explaining what each of these things do. So I explained up to float display block. What that means is we're going to transform each. By default, every element you add into HTML takes up the entire width of the web page. What block means is that it's only going to take up the required space. It truncates it down to its requirement. Color is just changing the color of the text. Align is putting it in the center of that element. And the padding, can anyone tell me why we only have 2 values when there's 4 sides to any element? Do we know?
Because it's taking up a block.
It's area, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so we had 2 separate values there because when in CSS, if you want to attribute something to top and bottom and left and right, you can just put in 2 values. Whereas if you wanted to give each one a different value, you can separate it into 4 values. If you only want one equal perimeter,
Yeah.
you just put 1 value, and it will
Kind
clever enough to work out which bit goes where.
Okay. We'll move on to the next part of the image.
Yeah, so we're going to now put some like dummy content into the web page. Has everyone got the nav bar working successfully? I'm seeing nods, so I'm going to go with it. Yes. We're going to put some dummy content in. We're going to put an image, and we're going to center it into the middle of the screen. And then after that, I'm going to, assuming we have time, I'm going to ask you guys to just kind of flesh yourself into what you want this website to be. If it's just your general CV, go for that. If you want to put like your rugby highlights on there, you can do that. If you want to put your accolades, your music score, I don't know, whatever you want to do, your website, your personal like representation of you, then you can add all that content in after. But for the moment, we're going to put in an image. We've seen in the HTML lesson that this is the image tag. Image tag self-close, which means you don't have to add in this kind of backslash anywhere, because as soon as you open an image tag, you want to close it because that's your full image. This is a link to an image that just literally says the word example, I believe. Yeah. And that's what's going in the page, but you can pick any image on the internet as long as you get to the link to it, or if it's on your computer, as long as you have the file directory to it.
Let's give this a go.
And what this will do is put a very large example dummy content into your web page. All good?
Now, shall we style it?
Yeah. And now we will put some styling onto that. So the first thing we're going to do is make it a display block, much like our list links. And this just means that it's not taking up the entire width of the screen, only the physical, only the pixels this is actually in. We're going to add some margins to it, which means that it's going to align itself. I'll just wait for the rest of these to come up and then I'll explain what they do.
Okay. Once everyone's got that, the last element that we're going to move on to are the div items. They are effectively used to divide up areas of your HTML page and to group elements together. So elements that you put within the div will only stay within the realms of that div. So if you had, for example, in our list element, we have the float. So those list elements will float to a certain direction. If we had an element within the div that's floating to a certain direction, it will only float to the extent of that, the edge of that div. So it won't go any further. And so this acts as a boundary to which we can divide up sections of the web page. So what we're going to do now is demonstrate how divs could be used. Now we're going to start off creating a div. We're not going to declare the areas of that div for the time being. Now we're going to create a div, and we're going to put some items in it. Okay, so we're going to put a paragraph, same words in button 1. So that's a div.
Oh, yeah.
It's okay. We haven't declared the wrapper class yet.
Pardon? Yeah, that.
The button or the wrapper, we haven't declared those yet.
Yeah, we still put those
We'll
in.
save those for a later time.
Oh, okay.
Can we just have a plain old
Yeah, of
div
course.
for the time being?
Of course.
Okay, let's run that, see what it looks like. Okay, so you see the example image has shifted. That was the effect of the styling we gave to that image, so it was nothing related to the div. But now you see the text down here. A div without styling doesn't really do much. Okay, so what's very important now is we're going to add some styling to this div, and that will increase its functionality.
Yeah. I think it might be worth just seeing this. I'm going to add a border to every item on the page,
Okay.
which is just means you can kind of visualize what we're talking about by these perimeters and such. So if you use this tag as if you were targeting an element, the asterisk.
Asterisk is the tag referring to everything.
Yes, everything in the page. So we're going to give it a border of color blue. 1 pixel, color blue, and it's going to be dashed. And now, when we look at our web page, we can see a bit more about kind of where each div is representing. So with our button, we can see it's taking up the entire width of the screen, whereas with the image, where we gave it a block display style, it's only taking up the width that it is, doesn't take up the full thing. So you could put divs on either side of it and such and use that space more effectively. But for the while, we will get rid of that so we can look at our web page.
Fun fact, the reason why the answer to life and everything is 42 is to do with the asterisks, because the Unicode representation of the asterisks, its Unicode is 42, 42 encoding.
Yeah.
Sorry, the asterisk encoding represents everything. The more you know. Okay, moving forward. So we've now.
What do we do?
Sorry, we've created a div. Now we're going to start it. So
Yeah.
would you like to explain?
So we're going to give it a class.
Okay. When you're styling divs, it's always important that, although you can style to all divs, okay, it's much better if you designate classes, because your divs are meant to be used for different purposes. Okay. Styling the entire div class is a very bad idea, as I've learned the hard way last year. Never do that, because things will never turn out the way you want them to turn out if you style the entire div. Okay. First thing we're going to do, we're going to create a button class, and that is going to be what is this? See here. We're going to give it a border. We're going to give it some padding, as we've done.
Okay.
As current, it doesn't show anything. Max, can we have more button divs and them being all within a separate div, please?
Yeah, why are we not showing anything there? Oh yeah. We are.
Okay, just going to create some more divs so you can see how divs interact with one another once they've been styled. There we go. So that's part. That is due mostly to the styling we just gave it. To the button class, we gave it a display which is inline and as blocks. So as you can see, all divs there are inline and in block format.
HTML and CSS.
Okay.
Yep. So
How do you put the class buttons?
this is the bit we add here, and this is the styling we've used so far. We don't call it there.
Okay.
So we are going to have to call it here so everyone can go back to house. But next time we're going to be looking at these buttons and hopefully implementing some JavaScript on them, and then we'll have used the core 3 scripts when making a web page. Currently, well, I hope everyone's got to this point so far. But feel free to try develop on this, build it how you want, like add your own content and do such before next class, before next club. And yeah, other than that, thank you very much.
Thank you.